Meeting is being live streamed.
Yep, admitting.
Woohoo. Ooh, that's a bunch of happy people. Well, maybe not everybody's so happy. I just saw Ori flash by. I see Ellen. I see Jane. Who else do I see that's popping up here? Okay, we're gonna do a transcript. Uh, bum, bum.
Mr. Capel, glad to see you joined us.
Hey, ooh, we're gonna have a bunch on here. So, Ed, if you want to kind of kick this thing off, and we'll
Well,
start formally in a few minutes when we get a whole bunch more.
well, thank you all for coming. I'm happy to have you all here. I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion tonight. I previewed this discussion um, last week with an in person with an AARP group in Chicago, and I had to actually add a slide to the presentation because I just barely got into the presentation. Somebody started yelling at me that I was talking about my personal opinions and not facts, and so I had to I had to have a try and have a discussion with him. And I tried to add I added at least one slide to the presentation after that meeting to bolster what I'm saying is not just my personal opinion. But we're gonna have fun. You know, Bill, usually give a couple of words from our sponsor before we get started. You want to do that?
I do, and as you know, it's probably more than just a couple of words, but uh, but we'll get this thing going and let me know if it says I'm sharing my screen, but I don't see anything. I'm going to try this
Well, we see
again.
it. We see it.
Oh, you did.
There we
We do
Okay,
go.
see it.
good. Uh, all right. All right. Well, welcome everybody to NWSOFA, which stands for Northwest Suburbs Organizing for Action. We're a group that started 14 years ago in the southwest suburbs, and we've now grown from 17 folks to a much larger organization. We are part of Indivisible, which has thousands of chapters across the country. Tonight, we're doing the Democratic Socialist or Social Democrat Zoom event with Ed Spire. Our goal is to organize and educate you all so you understand the facts, you can sharpen your arguments, and you communicate to your audience. And just a little note as to why my slides are flipping around. I was at a meeting this weekend where I actually put them on automatic. I forgot to turn it off. My apologies. We're organized on the two snowflake principle. As you can see on the left side, our communications. That's all the different ways that we send information out to you. And on the right-hand side are all 22 of our issue groups now. So in the last year, we did over 600 Zooms. We're on a path of 700 Zooms now. We have 17,000 members in the Northwest Burbs area, the land beyond O'Hare, and we have 27,000 Zoom members across the U.S. That's a total of 44,000. It doesn't add up quite right because we have about 4,000 or 5,000 that are duplicates. We have an indivisible leadership team of 30, all volunteers, that manage both the issue teams and the communications teams. Our impact dashboard for July is we had 67 events, 27 new videos created. We had 29 articles on Substack. We had, I just went through the membership, 31 newsletters, and we have almost 6.2 thousand followers on Blue Sky right now. You can see all the different programs that we have on Zoom. These are our in-person Zooms. Yes, we do have the 34 4-foot tall chicken. that presides on all of our rallies. That's one of our rallies in Arlington Heights. And we do have the 13th annual picnic. It's going to be on Saturday, August 22nd, noon till 8, right here in Arlington Heights. So if you can be here, noon to when the cows come home, we're going to have lunch at 2 and speakers starting at 3 and speakers also at 5 as they come in from their canvassing. So with that, we're going to turn this thing over to Ed and Democratic Socialist or Social Democrat. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, let me share my screen. Place current share. Share this. And then, maybe that go away. Oh, I'm not at the front page. Let me go back to the front page. There we go. All right, so we're going to talk about some terms that have been getting all the press these days. We're going to talk about this term, the Democratic Socialist, and how they're acting within the Democratic Party. We're going to understand some of these labels, which can be kind of confusing. Capitalism versus socialism, problems with each. We're going to talk about democratic socialism versus social democracy. Sounds like the same thing, different ways. We're going to talk about what are these candidates, what are they really like, why our young voters are voting for them, how those young voters could be disappointed in their choice if they do choose to elect some of these folks, how we can help avoid that disappointment, and of course we always have a call to action. So let's get going here. Okay, so we have a small number of Democratic candidates winning nominating primaries who call themselves Democratic Socialists. So we're going to talk about who they are, why they're winning, and to understand the questions, the answers to those two questions, we have to understand exactly what these new candidates are and who describe themselves or are described as Democratic Socialists. And we're going to talk about why they're gaining so much strength now, especially amongst our young voters. So to answer that first question, we're going to have to be clear about the definitions of these words, and we'll get there. To answer the second question, we have to look at the economic and political conditions that are shaping our young voters' views, and we're going to get there too. The point to make, though, is that these labels can be kind of imprecise, but there's a lot of energy behind them, and that energy is very real, and we have to try and capitalize on it and not shrug it off somehow. So we have these confusing labels: socialism, capitalism, social democracy, democratic socialism. We need to talk about what these words really mean, because words have meanings and the meanings of words matter. And we need to talk about what happens if the candidate ends up choosing the wrong label. It might be the wrong label because the label might mean something that the candidate doesn't really mean. Labels are just academic. They shape how voters understand the candidate, and they shape how opponents attack candidates. So if a candidate uses the wrong label for themselves, well, they can be attacked for positions they don't really actually hold. A politician whose real agenda is regulating capitalism plus stronger social protections can still be portrayed as someone who wants to abolish capitalism altogether if he chooses the wrong label. And that gives their opponents some leverage that they really shouldn't have. If we're sloppy with our language, we're going to be sloppy with how we understand these candidates. So we got to get past that. First, I want to talk about socialism and capitalism. Those two words are economic systems. Capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership, public ownership through markets, free market competition. Now, capitalism has been well known to generate innovation and prosperity, but capitalism can also concentrate wealth and leave major needs inadequately met when capitalism is not properly managed. So some people are kind of unhappy about capitalism, especially if it concentrates wealth in the business owner and leaves everybody else behind. The other economic system that people talk about is socialism. Socialism is an economic system which is based on social or public ownership of the means of production. In fact, that slogan is the slogan that defines the socialist economic system. The means of production are to be owned by the workers. And the reason somebody invented socialism, Marx and Lenin and those guys, is because they didn't want to see capitalism profits concentrated in the business owner. So they devised an economic system that doesn't have a business owner. And so that's the purpose for socialism, is to avoid the concentration of wealth in the business owners and leaving everybody else behind with nothing. Socialism has never created a strong economy. And that's because it kind of eliminates the driving force that makes capitalism work, which frankly is greed, competition between business owners who want to beat the other business owner. So the choice between socialism and capitalism is a choice about the structure of the economy, not just about compassion or fairness. Now, this is the spot where, when I was giving this last Tuesday, that some guy started yelling at me that socialism doesn't work was just my opinion. And now maybe he's confused about what socialism really is. But to be clear, socialism does not work. It's an economic system where there's no publicly owned companies, no privately owned companies. The government owns all and the companies. The government funds the companies. The government decides what companies there will be. There's no stock market. The banks are owned by the government. The government decides what job you get. Socialism doesn't work. The system assumes that government will manage everything effectively and for the common good, which is really pretty impossible. Centrally controlled economies are just too complex for to be managed from one location, from the one organization, from one bureau. Free markets are much better at running an economy that is responsive to what people want and enables companies to meet those needs with funding through corporation funding through stock market, for example. The other thing is that a socialist economy where the government owns and runs everything puts way too much power into the hands of the government. And the things that do work, like Social Security, those aren't socialism. So let's get past this. The socialist economic system has never worked and doesn't work. Every company that's tried it has eventually come back to capitalism in order to get an economy that works. But capitalism can fail too. Free market capitalism can concentrate wealth in the hands of the business owner, and that's not good, because extreme wealth in the hands of a business owner like a guy like Musk or Bezos, that translates into significant political power. Wealthy political donors get politicians elected, and those politicians do what their wealthy donors want instead of necessarily what the voters might want. And what do they want? What do they want? They want lower taxes on themselves. They want lower taxes on personal income, corporate profits, which means you have even more economic inequality. And they want looser rules on political donations so that they can use their political money to get whatever they want from government. And that aspect of capitalism, that failing of capitalism is happening here in the US. And in fact, the things have gotten so bad, the economic inequality is so high, the government has turned over so much control to corporations that our capitalist economy is failing to provide economic success for our youngest citizens. How do we know it's failing? Well, we measure economic inequality. We measure it through this thing called the Gini coefficient. It's a statistical measurement. It ranges from 0, which means everybody has an equal share of money, to 100, meaning all the money's in one guy's hands. Now, nobody expects it to ever be 0. Some folks will always naturally have more economic success than others. Some people work harder. Some people work smarter. Some people are lucky. But a high level of economic inequality is damaging to a society and to its economy. And how high is ours? Well, here's the numbers, folks. The best Nordic countries, which do the best in terms of lowering economic inequality, they have numbers, Gini numbers around 25, 26, 27. A lot of Europe, which is maybe not as progressive as the Scandinavian countries, they come around 33, 34. You'll see Russia is 40, China's 42, we're 44. We have more economic inequality in our country than Russia or China does in theirs. And it didn't always be that way. Back in the 1980s, we were more like Europe. We were around 34. But through 1985 and 1990 and 2000, it went up dramatically. It came down some during the pandemic, but then it popped right back up again. And the reason that all this stuff went up like this is because corporations started lobbying and using their money, and they get the results for that. And the results they get for that is bigger share of the economic pie, and means everybody else gets a smaller share of the economic pie. So the U.S. economic inequality is very high, and that hurts us because it puts too much power in the hands of guys like Bezos and Musk, and it makes people angry. It makes people upset that they're not getting a share of our economic wealth. So how do you stop a capitalistic economy from doing that? Basically, you do it through two ways. One is you tax high levels of income and corporate profit, and you use that money to fund strong public programs that invest in our population's education, their healthcare, their childcare. I mean, we used to do more of that back when the marginal tax rate was 90% back in the 1960s. But lowering and lowering and lowering the marginal tax rate means that we get less and less tax revenue from our richest companies and our richest business owners. So we have less and less money to spend on strong public programs. The other thing you do is you require better labor practices. You have higher minimum wage, you have better leave and vacation policies, you have stronger support for unions. All those kinds of things help our workers too, especially the stronger support for unions. Those are the kind of things that you can do with a capitalistic economy to stop it from concentrating wealth and creating high levels of economic inequality. So let me get rid of this. It's cluttering up my screen. So now we're hearing a lot about democratic socialism. And democratic socialism doesn't mean managing capitalism through stronger public programs. That's not what it means. Democratic socialism means moving to a socialist economy through voting, through political means. So democratic socialism really means eliminating capitalism, not managing it. So people who call themselves democratic socialists are implying that they want to get rid of the capitalist economy. Really? Now there's another confusing term which sounds like the same two words in the other order: social democracy. And social democracy is what most of the other countries in the world call their system. It's a system that manages capitalism the way I've described, rather than replacing it. It generally accepts capitalism while insisting on strong regulation and funding extensive social welfare protections. That is what many Americans admire in the European system. Social democracy is capitalism managed for the public good, not capitalism abolished. It's amazing. You have democratic socialism means getting rid of capitalism. Social democracy means keeping capitalism, but making it work for everybody. And that's very confusing to a lot of people. But the distinction really matters. It's a politics that wants to manage capitalism. This isn't the same as a politics that wants to replace it. And when those two concepts get blurred together, voters get confused. Opponents gain an opening to attack them. A candidate may mean one thing, supporters may hear another. Critics can seize on the most radical possible interpretation and attack the candidate. Mislabeling creates all kinds of unnecessary political vulnerability. Now let's talk about the Democratic Socialists of America. Now that's an organization that promotes socialism. It's not a political party. They don't put candidates on ballots under their party, under a party name. They're not organized as a political party the way the Libertarians are or the way the Greens are. They're just an organization that promotes the socialist economy, and they really do promote the socialist economy. You look closely at what they have to say, and what they have to say is that capitalism has failed us, and that we need to move to a socialist economic system. They're very radical. They're way too far left. We don't want anything to do with them. Um, but when voters hear that we have a Democratic Socialist candidate, uh, they hear that that candidate wants what DSA wants. That candidate wants to get rid of capitalism. So the DSA helps explain why the label is so toxic, why the label carries more ideological weight than any of the candidates really intend. These social democracy candidates, they don't want to get rid of capitalism. These guys who describe themselves as democratic socialists, they are very much social democrats. They're not democratic socialists. Their actual programs are to manage capitalism with stronger public guarantees, not getting rid of capitalism. And so there's a mismatch there when they call themselves a social democrat, but they don't want to do what the DSA wants to do. Um, there's just a complete mismatch between what they're calling themselves and what they really want. In many cases, the branding is much more radical than the governing agenda of these candidates. These candidates don't want to eliminate capitalism. But when they call themselves democratic socialists, they're associating themselves with extreme radicals in the DSA who really do want to eliminate capitalism. So I think these guys are making a mistake. Anytime they use the word social democrat, they're making a mistake. So that's why labels matter. They call themselves democratic socialists. They're not really socialists. But that once again allows their opponents on the right to claim they want to implement the socialist economy, which we know always fails. Trump's already called them communists, even though communists go further. Communists do more than just the means of production and owned by the workers. The communist slogan is from each according to their abilities to each according to their needs. Communists eliminate private property altogether. Certainly, none of our candidates are suggesting that. The other interesting thing is when Trump calls them communists, and some other GOP members are starting to do that too. That doesn't work with our youngest generation of voters. Our youngest generation of voters didn't live through the Cold War. They don't know that socialist economies always fail. They aren't scared of the word communist the way some of us who lived through all of that stuff are. So that attack doesn't work with those kids. So now, why are these democratic socialists rising now? Mostly, it's about it's not about theory. It's not about, oh, we think capitalism doesn't work and maybe capitalism should be gotten rid of and maybe we should go to something else. It's not because they're learning stuff in school. It's not because they're reading books. It's because of the economic pressure they are under and the political distrust they have. 50% of young adults said inflation affects them a whole lot. 41% said the same about housing costs, struggling to make ends meet. They have little or no financial security. Young voters are responding to their lived economic stress, not some abstract theory. And they're angry. Some youth polls found that the trust in the federal government is just 15%. Only 33% trust the 26 elections to be conducted fairly. Anti-establishment language becomes very persuasive for them, and that's what the Democratic Socialist candidates are bringing forth: anti-establishment language. Young voters are not responding to nothing; they're responding to a system that feels economically punishing to them and politically unresponsive to them. Their anger is not manufactured. It's rooted in economic strain and institutional distrust amongst our youngest voters. And you know what? They are right to be angry. Remember that graph I showed you? Well, back in the 1980s and 1970s and 1960s, when the baby boomer was coming up, we did have better tax structures. We did have more investment in our population. I mean, I went to college on Pell Grants. Mortgage rates were low. I was able to buy a house. The baby boomer generation did have strong public programs funded by higher taxes, and we became relatively wealthy because of the environment the government and the country had for us. But as economic inequality is rising with lower taxes and more business deregulation, we've dismantled public programs. I don't say we, the Democrats, have done it. but our generation has done it. We stopped investing in our population. So the baby boomers, we became homeowners, but then we pulled the rug out from under our children. Now, I know the Democrats didn't do it, but we didn't stop the other side from doing it. So the kids look at us and say, you had it good and you screwed us. So they are right to be angry. So this gives us a problem with the populist risk. Populism is a way of recognizing pain in the population and promising to do something about it. And real grievances can be captured by ineffective populism. The kind of stuff Trump did. Trump said, I can lower grocery prices on day one. Those kinds of slogans can energize people. But slogans aren't the same as a workable policy. Trump wasn't able to lower prices on day one. So the danger that we have here with this young energy is not the energy. The danger is that some guys will come along and promise some stuff they can't deliver. They will promise them, they will bring up proposals that are underdeveloped, overpromised, politically impossible to deliver quickly. You see all that energy, that useful energy, but if we don't have some policy discipline in what we're suggesting that they vote for, they're going to be disappointed because we're not going to be able to deliver any more than Trump was able to deliver the things he promised. So, again, I got to get rid of this. The GOP fell for that populism stuff in Trump. And we almost fell for it in Plattner. Trump gained power by playing to the anger on the right. He promised to address their grievances, make their lives better. His actual policies made their lives worse. And his character should have been a warning about all that. Well, the Democrats in Maine almost fell for Plattner for the same kind of reasons. He had slogans. He didn't have any real solutions that we could implement. And the Democrats just kind of ignored his character flaws. Fortunately, they figured it out before it was too late and replaced him with somebody else. But the point is, we can't just become the MAGA on the left. We need candidates not only of good character, but candidates with realistic policies we can actually implement that will actually help. You got to go from slogans to solutions. And I'm going to talk to you about Medicare for All as an example, because all of these Democratic Socialist candidates are talking about Medicare for All as the example of the kind of thing we should do. Well, hey, Medicare for All, to me at least, is morally compelling. It points to real injustices in American life. Medicare for All is, as far as I'm concerned, a policy goal that we should be embracing. But broad public programs require a credible funding plan and realistic transition. The point is that welfare systems are generally built through regulation and extensive public programs, which in practice require durable state capacity, broad public support. A good aspiration, wanting to implement something like Medicare for All isn't enough. We have to have a path to delivery that is real and can be attained. And that's not easy for Medicare for All. The reason it's not easy for Medicare for All is because we've allowed us to have this very high economic inequality. You see, in Europe, healthcare is funded by taxes on the middle class, not just taxing the rich, but everybody pays taxes to support their healthcare system. In the US, we can't do that now. I mean, if we try to lay more taxes on the middle class, they would rebel because they don't earn enough to live now. They can't afford to pay any more taxes. And even taxing high income corporate profits will not raise enough money for Medicare for All. And in fact, you might want to tax accumulated wealth, and that might not be constitutional. See, funding a program like Medicare for All is much more difficult for the US than it is for Europe. We could do it. There are people who have plans on how to do it. Syed has there's several people that have shown that it could be done. The reason it could be done is because the country overall spends more on healthcare now than we would need to spend if we had Medicare for All. We could fund Medicare for All if we redirect all that other spending. We have to redirect what corporations spend on health insurance. Well, they could spend less on healthcare, and then we tax most of what they save. We'd have to redirect all the money we spend on Medicaid, on Obamacare, on Veterans Administration, on Medicare as it is. Now, if you redirect all that stuff, and then you put some higher taxes on high incomes and corporate profits, then we could do this without raising taxes on the middle and lower classes. Uh, it's possible, but that's going to be really hard. Why is it going to be really hard? Because if you do that, there are winners and there are losers. The winners are us. We get affordable health care. The losers are corporations and their shareholders who are currently making a big profit on the U.S. healthcare system. Those guys, those losers, they have a lot of money. And they are going to lobby hard against this. The insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, hospital groups, even the AMA will lobby hard against this plan. And in this country, money talks politically. And if those guys all come out against this, it's going to be very hard to pass it. Even some large corporations, even though they might come out ahead, they may not, given the call to increase taxes on corporate profits. So even the large corporations will resist this. The point is, a promise to implicate Medicare for all within 4 or even 8 years may well fail. And then we're right back where Trump is. He promises stuff he can't deliver. I don't think we should promise stuff we can't deliver. So how do we overcome those difficulties? Well, one thing you can do is work on the underlying problems. If one of the underlying problems is that our economic inequality is too high, work on that. For me, the biggest thing we have to do is campaign finance reform. If we could get big money out of politics, so the wealthy cannot block what we want to do and buy the policies they want, then it would be easier. And we could implement policies to reverse our dangerously high economic inequality. It may be that we have to do those kinds of things first before we could be successfully implementing Medicare for all. But I don't hear the candidates saying that. I hear them saying, let's do Medicare for all. I don't hear them say, let's get money out of politics so we can do Medicare for all. So that's a problem. Okay, so in summary, the rise of these democratic socialists, they're rising because many young voters are correct to believe that the economy is failing them. Well, if we want that, they have a lot of energy. We want that energy to produce justice rather than disappointment. We have to define the terms clearly, think our policies through, and build policies that are bold enough to inspire us to act, but disciplined enough to effectively govern and come through with some kind of real results. The labels can be wrong. Democratic socialism, social democracy, the labels can be wrong, but the anger is real and the energy behind it is real. And we who understand this stuff need to guide this energy to political success. Our young voters are going to be impatient. Convincing them we can't get all the way to what they want quickly is not going to be easy. We have to sell them on structural reform to enable better policies. That'll be a hard sell. But promising them that we can get them what they want quickly, you'll just disappoint them. And that would be a missed opportunity. We need to turn their anger into real change that will actually help them. How do we do that? Well, as I said, getting money out of politics so we can implement programs like Medicare for all. We need a passage constitutional amendment ending Citizens United. We need to pass laws ending the legal corruption of our government through lobbying, through donations, through massive donations, through super PACs and all that. And we need to take steps that will lower our economic inequality, raising taxes on high earners and profitable corporations. Use that tax money to help make housing, education, healthcare, childcare more affordable, raise the minimum wage, reinvigorate unions. These are the kind of things that we should be working on now. And we need to help our Democratic Socialist candidates get on board and understand that we got to do this stuff first before we'll be able to do big things like Medicare for all. And even those changes won't be easy. But we have two things going for us. One is all that youthful energy. We're seeing momentum here. If we can channel that momentum into the right steps, we can make some real progress. The other reason that this might work is that big changes are easier after a national emergency. For example, constitutional amendments are hard to pass. A long time goes by with no constitutional amendments. And then there's several at once. And that happens after a national emergency of some kind. After the Civil War, there were 3 or 4 amendments to try and address the causes of the Civil War. Well, you know, we're in national emergency right now, right now. And when the dust settles on this national emergency, we're going to strive to build the political will to make some of these major changes in our government, such as passing a constitutional amendment to end Citizens United. That could lead us to be able to make some of these major changes in our economy in the next decade. So, what do I want you to do? Let's use these labels accurately. If a candidate is really advocating social democracy rather than democratic socialism, let's call them on it. I mean, I can imagine a conversation. So you're a democratic socialist. That means you want to eliminate capitalism? No, you don't want to eliminate capital. That's what the DSA wants. Why do you call yourself a democratic socialist when you don't want to do what the DSA wants to do? Don't you understand you're associating yourself with real radicals, real extremists? Second, we have to respect what our younger voters are telling us. They are economically squeezed. They're politically distrustful. They're hungry for change. That's important energy. We have to find a way to channel that to win elections and not end up disappointing them. Because if we end up disappointing them, they'll just go away and not be there for the next election. We should embrace their goals. I think Medicare for all is an excellent goal. And we need direct government action to counter the excesses of capitalism. We have to pursue these goals, but we have to do it in a way that can deliver. So we experienced Democrats shouldn't be gatekeepers, shouldn't be trying to stop the progressives. We shouldn't be trying to stop the social democratic candidates. We should be there to guide them, to help them understand how they can get what they want. We have to turn their moral urgency into durable progress. Make sure that bold politics is also serious politics. We got to meet this youthful energy with clarity, with respect, and with practical guidance. So the call to action is to discuss this stuff with your community, with your families. Communicate these ideas to your political leaders, and that's really important. I want to see our political leaders get this message. We need to help the Democratic Party accept these young voters and their Democratic Socialist candidates, even if we can't get them to use the right word, but also to guide them towards responsible policies that'll actually work rather than charismatic candidates who can't really deliver on their promises. So how do we get this message out? Well, you can help. You can send it to your political leadership, well, not necessarily your candidates, but the leadership of the Democratic Party, both locally and nationally. You can post it on social media. You know, if you want to do some of that, I hope you will, here's some texts you can use. We're going to send you these slides. You'll have all this stuff. If you want to post this on social media, you can start out with a presentation like this. Here's a short presentation. You post the slides or you post a link to the video we're going to be sending you. You can send this stuff to your political leaders. And if you want to send this stuff to your political leaders, here's an introduction that you could have saying what's important here. I want to have a conversation about how young voters, economic reform, and our messaging. And then you preface this and you attach either the slides or the video, and send this to your township Democratic Committee people, your county commissioner, your Democratic state senators and representatives, your Democratic congressmen. You know, if you send it to these guys, they'll already know that these guys aren't really socialists. They already pretty much know the stuff up to slide 18. You could ask them to skim to 19 and then start reading seriously. And even ask them for a short discussion on it. If you're going to ask your county commissioner or your Democratic committee person to have a chat with them, I'll be glad to go with you and meet that guy and help send this message to them. And I personally will be sending this to Cook County Democratic leadership, particularly Kaplan and Hernandez. So you don't need to send it to those guys. But if you want to help get this message around, you can send it. We need to do this. Please help it make it happen. That's what I got for today. So I'm going to stop sharing screens and I'm going to be ready for questions and discussion.
Sure are, Ed. Give me one moment. All right. Let me start at the top. Okay, Ori's question, would universal health care be defined as socialist?
Absolutely not. Let's make that perfectly clear. Socialism is an economic system where the means of production are owned by the workers. The government runs all the businesses. Social programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, anytime the government raises taxes and invests in the population is not socialism. Socialism is an economic system. Socialism is not raising taxes and investing in your population. I know that it's confusing. I mean, we even have the word social in the program Social Security, and I personally would prefer if we started using terms that don't have the S word in them at all. I'd like maybe instead of uh, uh, social democracy, we should have capitalist democracy or progressive capitalism or some term that doesn't have the S word in it. So we stop this confusion about what is and what is not socialism. Because every time we use the S word, the right will come back at us and say, oh, you're a socialist? You want to end capitalism, huh? Good luck with that. We open ourselves up for attacks every time we say the S word, and we got to just stop saying it.
Okay, Mark question, where would you place an FDR Democrat?
Oh, very progressive. I mean, a lot of our Democratic Socialist candidates are just extending the New Deal. The New Deal was all about um, raising taxes and using them as investments in our population. So, in fact, even some early Republicans, like Eisenhower, was happy with those concepts as well. So, an Eisenhower Republican or an FDR Democrat is right in line with our progressive wings, and I think that when the Democratic Party um, is fighting off the progressive wing, I think they're making a mistake. I mean, the only reason they're fighting off the progressive wing is because the Republicans call them socialists. And the Democratic Party is afraid they're going to lose because the Republicans are calling them socialists. So let's get past that socialist word and go with programs like Medicare for All, but let's go at it in a way that can be implemented by starting with getting money out of politics, for example.
Okay, Claudia, question. How do you define a strong economy, exponential growth?
Well, I don't think that exponential growth is necessary for a strong economy. Um, First of all, I don't think any economy has exponential growth. I mean, exponential growth means 10 times higher this time, 100 times higher next time, 1,000 times higher the time after that. That's what exponential growth means to an engineer or a scientist or somebody who understands mathematics. Um, Now, as to growth, one of the things in this country is that we are happy to go into debt and we figure that we can grow ourselves out of it. And that's linear growth. That's not exponential growth. I mean, the country it has not leapfrogged population by an order of magnitude. And when the country grows, the economy grows, and the value of dollars get higher, and that means that old debt is easier to repay. Um, and frankly, that's going to become a real problem going forward because our population is going to stop growing. I was just reading an article today, around 2030, we're going to get to the point where our maternal birth rate does not outnumber our death rate, and the population size is going to start to shrink unless we continue to bring in a lot of immigrants. Um, so, um, but you asked you how you this how you measure a strong economy. Well, as far as I'm concerned, a strong economy means that there are jobs that pay well, that enable people to have a halfway decent standard of living. I mean, that's what capitalist economies are able to provide, and socialist economies are not able to provide. So when I talk about a strong economy, I'm talking about an economy that can enable a reasonably good standard of living for the middle class of your country.
Nancy is asking, how did Reagan and Reaganomics create this economic mess and the SCOTUS appointees that is destroying our successful social programs?
Well, it's not just Reagan. I blame Milton Friedman more than I blame Reagan. Um, you go back to before Reagan, when unions were strong, um, and when um, big corporations and unions worked together, maybe not willingly, but they did work together. Union bargaining power was such that unions could force companies to share profits with workers. And Friedman comes along and says, the moral imperative of corporations is to maximize profits. That was that was his mantra. And business schools started teaching that, and corporations took it to heart, and they started to worry more about profits than anything else, and they started doing whatever they could to maximize profits. And I'll tell you when it really became serious. We had it goes before Reagan. We had Kennedy and Johnson who put together a bunch of programs like Medicare and civil rights. Well, mostly that was Medicare that raised taxes and spent money on the population. You know, the kind of thing that the FDR Democrats do. And the business owners didn't like it because it raised their taxes. And then when Nixon came into power, um, the business owners expected Nixon to roll that stuff back, but he didn't. He made it even worse. He started the EPA, which gave businesses more fits. That is when the businesses decided to take matters into their own hands. They couldn't trust either party, and they started using their money to lobby. And they've spent more and more money on lobbying every year since then. That is when the American middle class started to go downhill. That's when wages stopped rising along with corporate profits. So Reagan just helped it along. He didn't start it. He helped it along, but the GOP has backed business all the way ever since then. And because the businesses were putting money in, and they decided they could put money into the GOP because they could get them to give them favorable business tax levels and favorable business regulations that the Democrats wouldn't give them. So that's how I see the answer to how we got here. It's that corporations just used our money to take over, and Citizens United made it worse. And we're going to have to get control of our government away from big money corporations and people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos before we can make this country be what we want it to be.
Question for you. Magda says the mortgage rates in 1984 were about 14 to 16%.
Well, yeah, but that was in 1971 when I graduated. Yeah, there was a time when mortgage rates were really high, but look, you were able to buy a home for $25,000 that is now worth $1 million if you've kept it up. And salaries were such that you could do that. I mean, right now, salaries are such that you can't do that. If I mentioned that back in those days, before Nixon, salaries generally rose in proportion to corporate profits, and that doesn't happen anymore. Well, right now, if salaries had risen along with corporate profits, some people will look at that and say, well, gee, the average salary would be $250,000 a year. Well, that's not really quite right, because if salaries had risen along with corporate profits wouldn't have risen as much as they did. But if salaries had risen along with corporate profits and that had balanced, Average salaries would be more than 100,000 now. They'd be more like 150,000 now, and they probably could afford to buy a house, at least a starter house. But we have allowed economic inequality to grow so high that my children can't possibly do what I was able to do when I was their age. And I know a lot of people see that. A lot of people are in a situation where they have to help their kids more than they were ever helped when they were kids.
All righty. Mark has a question for you. Is what is being done in Hawaii and Montana a way around Citizens United? It may be a way around the Electoral College, hence undoing the power of money.
Okay, what's going on in those states is a law that says if you want to do business in our state, you can't use your political money to bribe Congress. Basically, that's what it says. And that might work. We would want more states to do it. We would want Delaware to do it. There will be court challenges against this. There will be big lobbying money thrown at it. But yes, that might work. And I think that we should all keep our eye on that. But that has nothing to do with the Electoral College. That's about stopping corporations from using their political money. That's not about stopping wealthy individuals from using their political money. That doesn't stop Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk from spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try and get their favorite candidate elected. But it could help. It could help the Citizens United situation. But it's got nothing to do with Electoral College. I'm not sure why you thought that.
All right. Nancy has a question. As this new future for the Democratic Party is shaping, what are we to do about Ken Martin, the DNC, Schumer, and Jeffries?
We need to send the messages I just told you to send. We need Schumer to understand that he has to embrace these people and not try and push them off. He has to help them defend themselves against the charge that they are trying to end capitalism instead of being afraid of the attacks that the right will bring on these candidates. And we have to do that. The guy in Michigan won his nomination. We aren't going to turn our back down and say, well, you won and now you're going to lose and we don't care. That's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to back that guy as much as we possibly can. And so to some extent, it doesn't matter what Schumer thinks. He can't stop the electorate from voting for these people. But when I say that we have to send these messages to the leadership of the Democratic Party, that's exactly what we have to do. And if those guys don't get it, then we have to kick them out of the leadership of the Democratic Party and nominate and elect some people in the Democratic Party who do get it. But the party cannot turn its back on these progressives. We can't turn the back on our youth who we pulled the rug out from under.
Joe has a question. What should we use for the 15-second elevator speech on a policy that is much better than the current?
Well, I think that the right thing to say is we should do what the European countries do. They manage capitalism for the greater good by taxing high income and corporations and invest that money in the population and regulating businesses, especially reinvigorating unions to improve salaries. I mean, in the short term, that's what we need to do. And of course, getting money out of politics will let us make the changes that we need to make to do this. I think that's how I would summarize it. I would say that turning to a socialist economic system is certainly not an answer, but the important things we want to do are not socialism.
Well, Doug's question is, Why don't we just return to FDR's Four Freedoms speech? Is it still as timely as tomorrow?
Well, I can't answer anything about that because I'm not familiar with the speech. I'm sorry.
All right. Joe is asking, how do we defeat the argument that socialism is simply giving free stuff to lazy people?
Okay, first of all, socialism isn't giving anybody anything. Socialism is the means of production are owned by the workers. Socialism is an economic system. Now, what the guy really wants to know is how do you justify um, taxing taxing people and using the money to invest in the population, which isn't socialism, but still, how do you justify that? Because we want to improve the common good. Because, for example, what good is there if corporations can make all kinds of stuff if nobody has the money to buy any of it? What's important is the general welfare of our population. And the way you have an improvement in the general welfare of your population is to have health care available to them, education available to them, child care available to them. Making these things available to our people help our people. It's not giving things to lazy people. It's helping people be productive so that if mothers want to go to work, they can find childcare and they can go to work. Um, and if our workforce is healthy, they'll be more productive. None of this is giving things to people who don't want to work. It's helping people be productive. It's helping them have a better life. And you know what? People are working their butts off right now, and they can't get a better life. And that's not right. What's right is that if you're willing to work a 40-hour week, you ought to be able to have a halfway decent standard of living. And that's what we're shooting for. And the other countries have proven you can do it when you manage capitalism properly. And a big part of that is taxing high incomes and high corporate profits so that those who can most afford to help the nation are the ones who do the most to help the nation.
Let's go to the next question, which is from Kim. How do you realistically remove money from politics? It's not possible and never has been.
Well, gee, it seems like it must be possible since a lot of other nations have done it. First of all, I have become convinced recently that we do need to pass a constitutional amendment to end Citizens United so that corporations don't have the same rights as people. Second of all, you can just pass federal laws to say you may not spend your money on political activities such as lobbying or political messaging beyond a certain dollar amount limit. I mean, you have some limits like this now, but there's all kinds of holes in the system that let people go around those things. You have to pass these laws. You have to pass constitutional amendments when necessary. And yes, you can definitely get the corrupting influence of huge amounts of money out. I mean, you can't get all the money out, but small donor money is just fine because it comes from actual voters who care about their issues, and it should be limited. Um, I think that there's a lot to be said for public financing of campaigns. You could structure things such that candidates who agree not to take outside donations get all the money they need to run a fair campaign from the government based on tax revenue. And in fact, by doing that properly, you could probably shorten the campaign cycle too by saying, here's when the money is going to become available. There's things that other countries have done that we could do too. And certainly you can't get all the money out, but you can get out the kind of corruption that a guy like Musk can do. I was just talking the other day about, just today, I was researching how Musk was paying people to register to vote. And running a kind of a lottery system that if you If you promise to vote,
Thank
I'll
you.
enter you in a lottery where you might win $1 million. And a lot of that stuff was probably illegal. And it's not quite clear exactly who has standing to file suit or under what laws. There is at least 2 court cases still pending on that, but there's plenty of room to pass laws to stop guys like Musk or Bezos um, from using their money to 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 swing elections because that makes their voice louder than anybody else's voice.
Give me one moment, Ed.
I'll give you 2. How about 3?
All right, I'll take them. Sounds good to me. Okay. Marie has a question. Some people feel that capitalism is as toxic as socialism. How do you address that?
Easy. Um, Socialism always fails to support an economy that can provide economic success to the middle class. Always. Capitalism is the way that successful countries do have an economy that supports the middle class. So we know that capitalism can work. We know that socialism can't. Now, what's the problem here in the US? That we don't manage capitalism properly. If we manage capitalism the way the Scandinavian countries did, we would be fine. The problem is not capitalism. The problem is our government's refusal to manage capitalism for the greater good and to allow those with money to tilt the tables of capitalism in their favor.
Mhm. All right. Mark's question. Mondragon is a large cooperative business in northern Spain. My understanding is that it is worker owned and run. It appears to be very profitable. Where would you place Mondragon in this discussion?
Well, cooperative businesses are fine. Cooperative businesses like Mondragon or Costco or any co-op you talk about is fine because it's still existing in a free market economy in competition with other corporations. And it's their choice to be a co-op owned by their workers. That's different from the socialist economy where all businesses are owned by the government on behalf of all workers. And the government will say, we only need one car company and they're going to build our cars and we're going to fund them and the cars end up to be crap because there's no competition, and that's happened repeatedly. That's happened in East Germany and in Russia, and the socialist economic system doesn't work, but individual corporations owned by their shareholders operating in a free market economy, that's just fine. But there's some companies that tried to do that where it didn't work out all that well. I mean, at one point, United Airlines said, "We really can't afford to give you guy raises, but we'll give you all shares, so you'll all be shareholders in our company, and it'll be an employee-owned company." But the stock was didn't go up, and they didn't make any money, and they were all really pissed. There was a back, I used to fly on Continental all the time because I had a job in Houston and I lived in Chicago and I went back and forth all the time. And I flew Continental, and Continental was very well run. And when Continental and United merged, at first the two airlines flight attendant unions were separate. So it was United Airlines, but your flight crew was either a United flight crew or a Continental flight crew, and you could tell the difference because United flight crews were angry because their worker-owned company never really was economically useful to them, and the Continental crews were great. So not all employee-owned companies work out well. The ones that do, great, but it's because they're working in a free market economy in competition with other companies, be they privately owned or publicly owned or worker owned, that you still have the kind of competition which drives the delivery of reasonable quality goods and services at reasonable prices. That competition is what makes capitalism work. Take it from a guy who started several businesses and saw that that my desire to beat my competitor drove me to build, to work my butt off to build competitive products that would beat them in the marketplace.
Hey, sir. We have a question from Mike. We can see the entire country has moved right for decades since Social Security was instituted. If the Dems are negotiating against extreme right politicians like Trump, won't they keep getting dragged right unless we have leftists counter negotiating like socialists?
Well, first of all, you don't have to be a socialist to be a leftist. People who want Medicare for all are not socialists. They just want progressive policies. Progressive Democrats, the far left part of the Democratic Party, are not socialists. So, and those guys are trying to drag the party further left. And in fact, it looks to me like they will successfully drag the party further left since voters are voting for some of their candidates. I mean, not a lot of them. I mean, there have probably been hundreds of primary elections decided recently, and what, a handful of them have gone to Democratic Socialist candidates. Of course, the Democratic Socialist candidates are getting all the press, but yeah, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party will continue to try and pull the party to the left. But I mean, you're right that the GOP has moved so far to the right that what looks like a Republican platform of 50 years ago almost looks like a Democratic platform now. But so as we work to try and implement our policies, I consider myself a progressive Democrat, and just because the GOP has gone so far to the right doesn't mean that I don't want to implement Medicare for all. I certainly do want to implement it, but I know that we can't do it until we get the corrupting influence of unlimited political money out of our system. So I'm focused more on fixing our system right now than trying to beat my head against Medicare for all when I know it can't be done until we fix the political system. I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it did.
Hey, Rick has a question for you. Are any of the current Democratic candidates running for office in 2026 actual Democratic socialists? I.e., do any of them want to eliminate capitalism? If
I,
so, which ones?
First of all, I don't know for sure. I mean, I did not study all the all the Democratic Socialist candidates who have won recently when I prepared this presentation. But I sincerely doubt it. I, I, I sincerely doubt that the furthest left of them, like the current mayor of New York, want to get rid of the capitalist economic system because I think they all know very well that the socialist economic system has always failed and always will. So I seriously doubt that any of them really want to do that. And that's one of the reasons that the DSA doesn't put candidates on ballots because they know that we're not going to vote for the socialist economic system. We're just not going to, which is why I think it's such a tragic mistake for these guys to even associate themselves with the phrase democratic socialism. They're not socialists, and they should not associate themselves with those nutcakes of the DSA that want to ruin the country.
Right now, Christine has a question.
Finally, what is it? Debbie, are you frozen? Oh no, or am I frozen? Debbie can't hear me. Can anybody? Oh, there
You're
he is.
you're good, Ed.
Yeah, you're good, Ed.
Okay, well, you seem to have frozen for a moment there.
You know what? It just came up. My internet connection is unstable, but this has been happening previously. So let's go again with the question from Christine. Can we allow the input of some of the DSA members, such as Tom Calarco, whom I told how to raise his hand?
We can, if there are DSA members here today, who want to ask questions. I'll be glad to entertain them. I'm not here to enter into a debate with anyone. But uh, if that's the intent of the question, I'm happy to have DSA members ask a question, and they could ask a question like one that would instill a debate, so to speak. I'm just not going to open the floor. I'm not going to open the microphone to somebody, because once they open the microphone to somebody, sometimes you can't get it back.
No problem. Okay, Mike's question. Don't you think dismissing young people's socialist beliefs is driving them to vote for MAGA because you say their beliefs are BS?
No, no. I don't think that I don't think, and I don't have any proof of this. I don't think that young people are voting for MAGA. I mean, I think some of them did in 2024, but there's old people that voted for MAGA in 2024. People voted for Trump in 2024 because all of them were under economic stress. And they stupidly believed Trump's lies when he said he could solve their economic problems. I've looked at the exit polling and the post-election polling and all that stuff, and the reason that Trump won was because people who normally voted blue ended up voting red because they were badly hurt by inflation and they believed Trump's lies. And those folks aren't going to vote for Trump again, for MAGA again, because Trump has failed to deliver what he promised. What Trump is doing didn't make their lives better; it made their lives worse. So, young or old, people who turned to Trump out of economic frustration, gave him the office and are regretting it now, and aren't going to vote for the Republicans again in the foreseeable future. That's the way I see it. Now, I haven't done any recent study on that, but that's how I see it.
Right. Joe's question. What about universal basic income?
Well, that might be necessary someday. I don't believe it's necessary now. I think that there's plenty of jobs available to people, and I think that with the right policies, those jobs could be paying a living wage, and people could have a halfway decent standard of living by earning an income. But depending on how things go with AI, that might not be the truth. 50 years from now, 25 years from now, at some point. I mean, right now, AI has the promise of replacing workers. Right now, companies are finding that it's not that easy. But who knows, Hey, 50 years from now, maybe AI and robotics and automation will allow businesses to create everything we need without much manual labor. And in a way, that could be good, because it could mean that people don't have to work for a living, because we can get everything we need without anybody doing much work. But we would need to change how everything is structured, because people would not be making a living by working. They would have to have some other way of having food and housing and stuff. And so a universal basic income funded by taxation on profitable corporations is something that we might have to consider. In fact, I've often thought that a UBI funded on corporations that make a lot of money without a lot of U.S. Resident workers should pay a high tax to fund a UBI, and that companies that do employ a lot of U.S. workers should pay a low tax to fund a UBI, and that would address offshoring as well as automation. But I don't think we're anywhere near needing that in this century.
Give me one moment, Ed.
Two or three.
Lynn's question, I know. I have a question from Lynn. We have 1.45 million 501c3s. So how do we get them to become paid caring co-ops locally and globally?
I don't know why you want to do that. Any one of them who wants to become a co-op has the right to do so, but we shouldn't force them to do that. Once again, the idea that we can replace capitalism with another system doesn't make any sense to me, because we haven't seen another system that works. And we know capitalism works, and we know that if the government manages capitalism properly for the greater good, it can work for everybody and not just for the business owner. So I'm not interested in forcing companies to become co-ops. They want to become a co-op, fine, let them. But I do want to see a free market where multiple corporations compete with one another in the free market for customers, for employees. And that is the basis of capitalism, free market capitalism. And I don't have any desire to do away with that. I think having a lot of 501c3s is that's not what we've talked about. Having a lot of corporations, both C corps and S corps, is a good thing. It's as I mentioned, it causes the competition in the marketplace. Competition in the marketplace drives delivery of quality goods and services at competitive prices. And without competition in a free marketplace, you don't get quality goods and services at any price.
All right. Christine has already had a question, the same question. I just asked you before. Mary's question, how do we explain that socialism is not or does not lead to communism?
Well, first of all, I don't think you want to make that argument at all. Socialism is the economic system on which communism is built. There is an association between the socialist economic system and a communistic way of running your country. I wouldn't necessarily say that socialism inevitably leads to communism, but they're related. The important point is that we don't want anything to do with socialism. For the umpteenth time, socialism is an economic system that always has failed and always will. The things we want, Medicare for all, Social Security, public education, are not socialism. Don't call them socialism. When you call them socialism, you open yourself up to an attack from the right that you want to end capitalism and ruin our economy.
Hey, Kim's question. What country has removed bribes, gifts, and favors? It's not possible. Okay, you just qualified it. Real time, it's not possible. People are crafty when it comes to money. More of a statement.
Okay, I will research this and I will provide a detailed answer when I send out the slides. But it is certainly true that we have far more corruption in our government due to the corrupting power of unlimited political money than in most of Western Europe, in Canada, in Australia. I have not got a detailed answer for you on this right now, but it is intuitively obvious to me, and I will research that and bring forth documentation on that, along with when we send the slides out. I'm going to take a note to do that right now.
All right. Would you like me to wait a moment, Ed, so you can do that?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. Marie has a question for you and wants to know, have you read Karl Marx and Engels on communism and socialism?
No, I have not. That was an easy question, and that's the easy answer.
It
I have,
was.
just because I haven't read those specific books doesn't mean I haven't researched these topics. I have researched these topics extensively, and I don't think that not having read the book means that I don't know what I'm talking about.
All right. Cynthia has a question. Are questions about Democratic Socialists splitting the party, or will they possibly cause us the midterms? And I'm sure that's supposed to be cost, but cause will work too.
Well, this is a concern. I see, I see parts of the Democratic Party trying to resist the Democratic Socialist candidates. And I think that it's a mistake. I think that these Democratic Socialist candidates can win if we support them properly, if we make it very clear that they are not socialists, they do not want to end capitalistics, they don't want to end capitalism. They just want things that are popular. They want Medicare for all, which is quite popular. A lot of people want it. If we point out that the policies, regardless of what they call themselves, the policies they want are things our population wants. We have to focus our campaigns along those lines. That, along with the fact that the GOP is so badly underwater politically, opinion-wise, because of all the junk that Trump has done, means I don't think we're in danger in the midterms. And I think that Democratic establishment that is trying to stop these candidates is making a mistake. They should let the people vote and not try and influence who they vote for. And if they don't always win. There was just an election in Hawaii where the Democratic Socialist candidate lost to a moderate Democrat. In fact, most of the nominations that have occurred in all of our primaries have gone to moderate Democrats. Very few of them, relatively, have gone to Democratic Socialist candidates. There's only one really, really big one I know that's critical, and that is the Senate race in Michigan. But I don't fear that we're going to lose the midterms because of this stuff. Especially if we embrace and support these candidates the way we should. And that's my message to our Democratic Party leadership. And I hope that if you agree with me, you will help send that kind of message to our Democratic Party leadership.
Good to me. Joe's question: how do you describe Trump's purchase of 5 to 10% of public companies, Intel, Paramount, etc.? I heard there are 30.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is particularly significant. I mean, this is not Trump taking over the company. This is not the federal government deciding how that company will be run. It's an attempt for the federal government to gain some revenue through the raise of the stock value of the company. I don't think it's something our government should be doing. And every once in a while I see somebody saying, if you're worried about socialism, you should be worrying about our country buying a stake in a public company. But I don't think that's socialism either. So I think this is not a big issue for me either way.
All right. Get ready for some snark, Ed. Miguel has a question as to what makes you qualified to lead this. Why not have a DSA organizer?
Okay. The DSA, if you are a DSA organizer and you want to make your case, then you find your own forum. You go ahead and get somebody to host a meeting that can attract a couple of hundred people, and you go ahead and make your case. Now, I've made my case here. If there's anybody from the DSA on this call and they want to ask a question, if they want to dispute the idea that the socialist economy can work, then I ask them to bring forth some examples. Show me some country that is using a socialist economic system where the means of production are owned by the workers and the government runs all the businesses and has a successful economy supporting a decent standard of living for the middle class. Show me some examples like that, and we'll have something to talk about. But if you're here to say capitalism sucks, we should replace it with the socialist economy, come forward with some examples of where that has worked. And if you can't show us where it has worked, then shut up and go away. Okay?
Good snark there, Ed. Sue has a
I can handle
question
it.
for you. I know. Sue has a question for you. How is it legal for the government to buy stocks in companies? That sounds like communism, not capitalism.
Okay. I don't know. I expect it's legal, but it's not socialism, it's not communism. It's just there certainly are times when the government should make an investment in businesses. For example, if we decide that we need to address global warming in order to ensure the continued ability to live on this planet, and if we decide that we need some companies to do some things that the free market won't fund right now, then the government should fund it. And we do this kind of thing. So making investments in public companies or private companies is something the government legally does and should do. Now, asking for some shares in return for that investment, once again, I imagine that's legal. I don't think it's appropriate, but I don't think it's a big deal either. It's certainly not the socialist economic system because we're not taking over that company. And it's certainly not communism. Communism means no private property at all. So don't throw these words around like they're just words. They're not just words. These words have meaning. And when you use them separate from what they mean, you just confuse everybody.
Well, let me just say, if anybody else has a question, please put question in front of your inquiry. If I missed your question, that could be why. So right now, Ed, I do not see anything. Whoa, I spoke too soon. All right, Cynthia. Let me see what Cynthia has for you. It says, repeat of my earlier question, I wholeheartedly support getting billionaire corporate money out of politics. However, I just do not see how we will get the people who benefit from that money to propose and approve an amendment to do so.
I'm not sure I follow all that. Just say the whole question again, please.
I think it's more of a statement to her earlier question that she asked, which is farther up in the chat. So
say it again. Say the whole thing
okay,
again.
will do. I wholeheartedly support getting billionaire corporate money out of politics. However, I just do not see how we will get the people who benefit from that money to propose and approve an amendment to do so.
Well, you elect enough Democrats, and you'll get the amendment proposed. It's generally the Democrats that have raised bills in the House to get money out of politics one way or another. And it's generally the GOP in the Senate that has killed those bills. And in fact, that's pretty much how our government is supposed to work. The House is proportional to the population, and it represents what the people really want. The Senate represents the states. The Senate is not proportional to the population, and the Senate doesn't necessarily want to do what the population wants to do in general. But if you get enough Democratic senators and congressmen, you will see you will see amendments proposed by Congress. Now, getting them passed by the states is another issue because you need 3/4 of the states to ratify it. But people with a lot of money have a lot of power, but they can be overcome by voting. And we wouldn't have Obamacare if that wasn't true. So don't don't believe it's impossible. It's not impossible to make these changes, but we need political will. We need a lot more people to understand that when they vote for the Republicans, they're voting against their own self-interest. And hopefully, given the damage that the GOP has allowed to happen to this country over the last 2 years, and which will continue over the next 2 years to some extent, we can do better towards the end of this decade and into the next one. Now,
Hey.
I just noticed. Let me say something. I noticed some people. Down at the bottom of my screen, I see some chat stuff going by, and I see some chat stuff going by that has the word question in front of it, and then I see some chat stuff going by that doesn't have the word question in front of it, but I still think we should discuss. So when I see somebody post something that says, I disagree with Ed, without putting the word question in front of it, I encourage them to go back and post that again with the word question in front of it so we can discuss it.
Yep. And that's what I was going to say. She disagreed. It was Sue. Okay. It says the government gives grants and loans to help things like better energy.
I'm
That
not sure
was,
I understand. Well, look, a lot of times the government is giving grants inappropriately. We don't need to be funding oil companies. They're making enough money already. I didn't say, and I don't mean to say, that all the grants that our government is doing are the right thing to do. What I said is there are times when it is right for the government to make investments. And I think that when Biden got the Congress to pass bills to help companies build green technology, I think that was an appropriate investment of tax dollars into public and private companies. So don't get me wrong. Don't think that I'm telling you that everything the government does is right. I'm just saying that there are certainly times when the government should be putting money into private businesses or public businesses. I'm not sure they should be asking for shares in return, but I don't think it's a big deal. So please, if you disagree with what I'm saying, don't just let it slide. Put the word question in front of it and put it in the chat and let's discuss it.
okay. We will go to Joe. What can we do in 2027 to limit campaign contributions?
Nothing in 2027. We have to have more control of the Senate than that. You have to have 60 senators to get anything important like that through the Senate. And besides that, in 2027, Trump will still have the veto. We can't do anything until Trump's out of office. What we can do in 2027 is give him grief. We can make sure he can't get anything through Congress. We can drag him over the coals with congressional investigations. We can do a lot to stop him in 2027. But he can still stop any bill we pass because he can veto it, and we probably don't have enough votes in the Senate or even in the House to override a veto. So don't look for a quick win here. There is no quick win here. This is something that we're going to address seriously starting in 2029, and the effort to rebuild this country is going to go well into the 2030s.
Right. Okay, Mike's question. Don't you think calling socialism the S word sounds like Fox News and makes people think candidates are afraid to talk about actual ideas and policies?
Well, no, I wanted to talk about actual ideas and policies. I think talking about Medicare for all is a great thing to do. And I think they have to talk about how we're going to get there. But saying that Medicare for all is a socialist policy doesn't help. It hurts. And it hurts because it allows Fox News and the GOP to attack it. So talk about the programs. Talk about the progressive programs that you want to do to help our nation. Talk about the practical ways in which we can get them implemented. And stop calling yourself a socialist, because none of those things are socialism.
All right, we have Mr. Anthony's question. What would it take for you to recognize that capitalism has failed? Would Amazon denying warehouse workers bathroom breaks be enough? What is the line that is too much?
Maybe you didn't listen to my presentation. I said in my presentation that capitalism has failed our country. So you don't have to ask me what it will take for me to say that capitalism failed. I already said it. And I said why. And I said what we do about it. And what we do about it is not get rid of capitalism. It's to manage capitalism better. So, you know what? That's one of the things I dislike about some of these guys. They put words in your mouth you didn't say. And that is not helpful. That's not a helpful way to debate.
Right. All right, Ed. How from Sue again, how can we convince angry young men that they vote against their own self-interest when voting for Trump does not help them oppress women?
Okay, I don't think that we need to convince angry young men of anything. I think angry young men look at this economy where they're still living with their parents and say, this economy sucks. We need to fix this economy. I don't think that wanting to oppress women is what drives people to vote. I think that it's the economy, stupid. It's always the economy, stupid. And that's what James Carville said so famously, and he was right. So what we need to do is have proposals for these young people. The Democratic Socialist candidates are addressing their concerns with some proposals. I don't think they're properly addressing them because I think they're overpromising. I think that these angry young men are much more likely to vote for a Democratic Socialist candidate than they are to vote for a MAGA candidate, now that the MAGA candidates have completely failed them. Um, to me, the right thing to do is to stop talking about the S word, talk about progressive policies that will help our citizens and our nations and our young people, and talk about practical ways we can actually get them implemented.
All right, I just want to say thank you, Vanita. Question from Vanita. Mayor Mamdani calls himself a democratic socialist. Why use this terminology? Because socialist means different things to different people and has negative connotations to some people. On the other hand, there is corporate socialism, right?
No, okay. First of all, the fact that the word socialism means different things to different people is a problem. I mean, get a dictionary, get an encyclopedia, look up what the word means. One of the things I'm giving this presentation is to help people understand what these words mean. And I don't want the word socialism to mean different things to different people. I want everybody to understand what socialism means. It means the means of production are owned by the workers and the government owns all the businesses and your economy fails. That's socialism. Nothing else is socialism. Social Security is not socialism. Making investments in companies is not socialism.
Hey. And Richard has a question for you. All right. Socialism has become an ideology and identity, not policy. Do you think the resulting attacks on libertarianism are propaganda designed to attack liberal democracy? And isn't liberal democracy the only democracy that there really is? Because liberalism is the foundation of democracy?
Wow, there's a lot right
Yeah,
there.
there is.
First of all, yeah, liberal democracy is democracy, but I mean, the word liberal has evolved in its meaning. I mean, originally, liberal just meant open to new ideas, um, open to different concepts, open to trying different things. as opposed to conservatism, which was, I like things the way they are. I don't want them to change. And if anything changes, I want it to be more of the same that we already had.
Mhm.
Whereas, no, now liberalism is more thought of as being progressive policies, um, not just open to new ideas, but open to specific ideas that are of the progressive nature in the way we govern our nation. Um, Go back and say the whole question again. There's so much in there that I'm not sure I remember all of it and can address all of it.
Okay, let me read it again, Ed. Socialism has become an ideology and identity, not policy.
Okay,
Do you
stop right
think?
there. Stop,
All
stop
right.
right there. When you say socialism has become this, I say that's just because people are um, allowing that word, the meaning of that word, to evolve in a manner which is inappropriate. Socialism is not an ideology. It's not a it's not any of those things you just said. Socialism is the means of production are owned by the workers. That's what socialism is. And if we let the definition of the word meander someplace else, so that somebody thinks socialism means social security, or socialism means um, free stuff for people, um, then we all get confused and we can't talk to one another. And people on the right accuse us of wanting to end capitalism, blah, 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 blah. Stop saying socialism means this, that, or the other. It doesn't mean anything but what the dictionary says it means. And if we start using the words the way the dictionary says they mean, we'll be able to communicate with each other more clearly. There'll be less confusion. There'll be less opportunity to attack. So go ahead and read the rest of the question after that spot.
Okay, let's get there. Do you think the resulting attacks on liberalism are propaganda designed to attack liberal democracy?
Um, Yeah, basically. I think that the forces on the right are not interested in democracy because democracy stops corporations from making all the money they can. There's plenty of people on the right, even some in Silicon Valley now, that are openly arguing that we have too much democracy. So yeah, there's a tax on democracy here. Um, there was something in there about the Libertarian Party. What was that?
The next part of it is, and isn't liberal democracy the only democracy there really is, because liberalism is the foundation of democracy.
Yeah. We talked about that already, but I thought there was
Yeah.
something there about libertarianism.
No, liberalism are
Okay.
propaganda
All right.
designed. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we've covered that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Go to Andrea. If we taxed investments at the same rate as a person's income and this money went into supporting social programs, would this make up the predicted shortfalls?
No, we should do it. The idea that unearned income is taxed less than earned income is crazy in my mind. I mean, people who are working for a living and earning income shouldn't have to pay more taxes than people who are sitting back and collecting interest. That's ridiculous. But um, taxing unearned income at the same rate as earned income is a small change compared to what we need to do. Um, Taxing, even as I said, even taxing the wealthy, taxing wealthy incomes, taxing high corporate profits, even if we taxed uh, existing wealth, none of that will raise enough money to fund Medicare for all. None of it. Medicare for all takes way more money than you can raise by taxing the rich. And other nations don't fund their health care by taxing the rich. They fund it by taxing everybody. And we can't do that here because our middle class can't afford to pay any more taxes because the salaries are so crappy around here. Um, so yeah, we should tax um, unearned income at the same rate that we tax earned income. And yes, we should have a higher marginal tax rate. And yes, we should have higher corporate tax rates. And all those things would help lower the economic inequality in our country. But they won't fund Medicare for all. We have to do a lot of other stuff that I talked about in this presentation if you want to raise enough money to pay for Medicare for all.
Marianne has a couple questions. I'll start with the first one. Does grant money consider purchasing the company?
Generally, no. As I said, there are many times when it's appropriate for the federal government or state governments to inject money into businesses to get stuff to be done that needs to be done that the free market won't fund because there's no short-term profit in it. In general, I don't think that we've ever asked for a share of ownership in the country when we make a grant like that. Now, Trump's doing that stuff, and I don't think it's right, but I don't think it's a big deal either. Um, so no, when we make a grant to a company, it almost never means we want part ownership of the company.
Okay. Her second question, would we need an amendment or Congress to pass a law regarding money?
Well, for a long time, I've argued that we can change most of what we need to change just with laws passed by Congress. Recently, I've been kind of convinced by some of my associates, Jim McGrath in particular, that we're going to need a constitutional amendment to overcome Citizens United. So I expect that we are going to need at least that constitutional amendment to really handle this properly. But a lot can be done, especially after that, with federal laws that with a proper amendment that the Supreme Court can't strike down.
Okay. Beulah has a question for you. If work is going so well, why is the African American unemployment rate 7+% and national is less? 300,000 plus African American women lost government jobs.
Well, I don't think that work is going quite so well. I mean, recently we just saw a drop of 23,000 jobs instead of an increase. We saw that the unemployment rate went down because people have stopped looking for work. As to why the unemployment rate amongst our black population is higher than the rest of the population, well, obviously there's still effects of racism in our country. There's effects not just in blatant racism, but there's lingering effects of black families that haven't had a good opportunity for education, haven't had good opportunity to enter the middle class. I'm not surprised to see that unemployment amongst black minorities is higher than average. We still have a lot of work to do to make this a more perfect union. And I'm not saying that everything is fine, but I am saying that I don't think we need a UBI because I do think that if with proper management of capitalism at this point, work can provide a decent standard of living without having to work two jobs. And that's where I am on it.
Well, I know Bill has said there's a half on right now, so I am looking for more questions for you, Ed.
Well, if we don't have any, we can give people back 10 minutes of their evening.
Okay.
But I think it's been a great discussion. I appreciate all the questions, even from the DSA types. I mean, when you ask me a leading question like that, it allows me to stick it where it needs to get stuck, and I'm happy to do so. Maybe
I have a little statement for you.
Okay, go ahead. What is it?
Or a question. She put question. All right, Marianne. I have had 16 years of both private school and public school and was taught socialism equates to communism.
Well, you were taught wrong. Socialism is an economic system. Communism is no private property. They're two different things. Socialism is the economic system underlying communism, but you can have socialism without communism. I'm sorry. Just look up the words. Look up the meaning of the words. It's very easy. Just go to Wikipedia. Go to Encyclopedia Britannica. Go to the dictionary. Look up the meaning of the words. Words have meaning, and the meanings are important.
All right. Joe's question: should we tax unearned income at a higher rate than earned income?
I doubt that. I think that taxing it at the same rate is right. But I can't say I'm enough of an economist to really answer that question.
Okay, and I have Nicole's question here. Would ranked choice voting combined with taxpayers funded campaign decrease big money in our elections, but the parties don't want it because it decreases their control on the candidates and on the money?
Okay, so first of all, RCV's got nothing to do with money in politics. We 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 need to get the corrupting influence of unlimited political money out of our political system, so that people who have tons of money can't just get whatever policies they want out of the government and block whatever we want. Now, that's separate from electoral politics. RCV is a reasonable approach that enables third parties to build support. So obviously, the major parties are not clamoring after it because the major parties don't want to see third parties gaining support. So sometimes we have to push RCV down their throats. Sometimes we have to insist that they do it. But RCV is not a magic solution to our electoral problems either. The real problem in our electoral system is not RCV, or the lack of RCV. It's the political primaries. When you have political primaries controlled by low turnout voters, you end up with nominees in safe districts that are radical on both sides of the aisle, and you end up with a Congress that can't compromise. The real thing, aside from getting money out of politics, the real thing we need to do to fix our political system is end the political primaries. And that's another whole thing we've talked about before in sessions here. But RCV is part of that solution, but it's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce to that solution is ending political primaries.
Hey, Janet has a question. Should we focus on raising the minimum wage?
I think that I wouldn't say we focus on it. I think it should be one of the planks in our platform. Passing laws that revitalize unions is probably more important because union bargaining power was more important towards raising salaries than the minimum wage was. There's a number of steps we can take that I haven't enumerated fully in this discussion, and maybe we should have another session next time on more details on all the planks that we should have in the Democratic Party platform, both to get money out of politics and to lower economic inequality. But yes, raising minimum wages is one component of that, but I wouldn't call it a focus. There's probably 10 things we should be doing along those lines.
Would you like another question, Ed?
I'm willing to sit here until 9 o'clock.
All right. Anne has a question and/or statement. I think there's a two-parter here. I'm curious, have you read the book Medicare for All, co-authored by Dr. El Sayed?
I have not, but I have looked at his policy proposals. I think his policy proposals are rational. They're very similar to the kinds of proposals that Bernie has made. I have a lot of respect for his opinions. I know he is a medical man. I know he's a public policy man. And the trouble is that it's going to be really difficult to implement what he wants to implement. And if we don't get money out of politics first, it's going to be very difficult to do what he thinks we should do. I agree we should do it. I'm in favor of the policy proposal he has. It's just that he and all of them need to be talking more about how it's going to be so hard and what we got to do to do it, which means they should be talking much more about getting money out of politics than they are.
Right. And she says, I highly recommend it for everyone. He addresses several ways to fund universal health care. For example, we pay around 12% to the administration of the privatized insurance. That 12% could be addressed.
Absolutely. He's right that if we redirect I said this in the presentation. If we redirect all the money we currently spend on healthcare, we can eliminate Medicaid for all and save money. It's just that there's a lot of moving parts there, and there's a lot of people who make profit off those moving parts who are going to lobby against it and argue that we shouldn't do it. And Congress is unlikely to do it as long as those lobbyists have free reign through the halls of Congress to talk them out of it and make campaign donations that talk them out of it.
And Joe's question, how do we collect tax for healthcare? Current healthcare expenses are 5.5 trillion. Realistically, we can where we can get a few trillion. Tax the rich?
Well, no, for healthcare, what's spent on healthcare in this country is more than 5 trillion. It's more like 10 trillion. You're just talking about what the federal government spends on it. Think about what the corporations spend on it too. The total spending for healthcare in this country per year is about 10 trillion, not 5 trillion, because a lot of it is not federal money. Now we can find ways to direct all that money into Medicare for all. For example, we could say to corporations under Medicare for all, you don't have to provide insurance. And if you want to provide any kind of insurance, it's just gap insurance, which is much cheaper than full insurance. So your cost is going to go down. It means you're going to save a bunch of money. Well, we're going to tax that money. We're going to take 85% of that money from you in taxation. And then we're going to put that money into Medicare for all. This stuff is theoretically possible. And guys like Bernie and Syed have plans that would work if we can implement them. And I think we should implement them. But it's going to be difficult until we get control of our government and get people like Bezos and Musk to be able to stop us from implementing the stuff we want to implement. I got 4 minutes left.
I see. I just looked at the clock too. Cynthia is asking, raising minimum wage would cover people who are not in unions. Are more workers in unions or not in unions? I'm thinking of those.
Most workers are not in unions right now because
now.
we've allowed the rich to buy laws that emasculate unions and destroy them. We would need to reinvigorate unions. But even when you had strong unions, it still was only maybe 35% of the population. But when that 35% of the population gets higher wages because of union bargaining power, that brings up everybody else too, because they got to compete for workers. So, you don't have to have everybody be unionized for union power to help the country, but you need more people that are unionized right now because we need to reinvigorate unions.
All right. Lynn is saying, how about documentary on single payer? Go to Fix It, Health at the Tipping Point by Unfinished Business.
Okay, thank you for the recommendation.
Okay. And again, how to tax every millisecond transaction on all the Wall Street banking systems, also from Lynn.
Well, I don't know that you need I don't know that you need to do that. I mean, we probably can just get along with higher marginal tax rates on wealthy on high earners and higher corporate tax rates. And finding this, that, or the other to tax just makes for a more complex tax system. I don't think we need a more complex tax system. I think we need a simpler tax system, but we need a tax system which more effectively calls for those who can most afford to help the nation to do so.
All right. I think we'll cap it there.
Okay, Bill, I'm done. Thanks for helping us make this discussion possible. Thank you all for being here. I will research this stuff about whatever it is I was told to research. I took a note on it. I will do it, and I'll get that dated to you, Bill, before you send the slides out.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ed. This is, as always, very informational. You really did the research. The subject was, democratic socialism or social democracy. And I think you really made that separation as clear as possible. There were some folks in the chat that didn't want to hear what you were saying, and I think they were quote unquote democratic socialists, which is fine, but it did get a little wonky at times. I really
So you think we should?
appreciate you. I
You think
really
we should have?
appreciate.
You think we should have a debate? Should we have me and a DSA representative on next time and just have a live debate? What do you think?
I'm going to let you think about that because
Yeah.
we ask you to have one of these every month to address some of the most critical um, conversations that are out there, and this
Well,
is
look, fine.
one of the
Okay,
most
look.
critical from me.
So you saw some guys in the chat that were seemed like DSA guys and were kind of critical of what I was saying. Get me their contact information, and I will have a discussion with them personally and see if we want to have a public debate about this.
All right, I'm going to let you figure that out. I think I've got those either myself or Debbie has, and we can let you decide if you'd like to do that.
Sure,
Uh,
I'd like to do that.
yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, and I mentioned it before we started this call. I was drifting into the democratic socialism category because I really liked what Mandami was doing. I liked some of the things that Bernie had done, etc. But then on Fox News, of all places, they had the director of the Democratic Socialists uh, on, and what she defined in public on Fox News was getting rid of the Supreme Court, getting rid of Congress, getting rid of immigration. I mean, I I was appalled, and that just opened us up, where immediately my brain went to, well, we're progressive. Uh, how can we be progressive, and how can we embrace some of these Bernie-like and Mandani-like policies without being called a democratic socialist now? And I think you answered that question. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, very well. Thank you all for being here. We will. I will see if I can get in touch with some of the folks who I'm saying are. I want to be respectful to them. I don't want to be disrespectful to them. I don't want to say they're crazy. I want to say they're misguided. I want to say that they're proposing policies that ultimately would damage our country, and that we can look around at the world and see the kind of policies that do work, and they aren't what they're proposing. So
Okay.
I will see if I can find some contact within the chat information to see if we can have that discussion in public.
Randy left his email in there for you.
Okay, very good. Okay, well,
Debbie,
thanks a lot, folks.
would you make sure that you capture the chat?
I will do that. Ed, did you
Okay.
need me to send that to you at all?
Yes, please do.
Okay, I will do that.
Good night.
All right. All right, got it.
And this everything has been on YouTube Live, so you can find it on
So
our website,
so
nwsofa.org, right now.
so Randy Clark, are you the guy? Okay.
He's given you a thumbs up before us.
All right, we'll
Nice.
have a chat, Randy. Thank you.
Okay.